think it was about -7 last night. There's ice in the ditches anyway. So I'm just going to go fill up a tote for the last few yards here, which we ran out of syrup on, just to top them up. This is a yard Carrie run out on, so there's just a little bit of syrup in this tote. It's got to be above freezing now. Still ice in the ditch, but the bees are foraging on this tote. There's a little bit of syrup in there. So I'm going to give them a full tote for his next week. It's supposed to be nice and sunny, nice and warm, so I'll give them some chance to get out and fly. The strategy that I employ here is to kind of shut these hives down, lock them up, completely quit the brood rearing, so they can kind of restrict themselves. They can kind of bundle up into a tight ball, and that way when this cold, terrible weather comes through, they can hunker down and get through it. So we just pretty much want them to hunker down. There. That should top them up. Beautiful. Right now you can see your true well-defined winter cluster, winter nest. You can see, you know, just the viability of that colony as it goes in. Right, what you see now is what you can probably see coming out of April. And what I have been seeing is we've had good brood rearing all through August, and we've had brood rearing into September, and brood, the last of the brood, emerging right about now. So the way I look at it is the bees in August that emerge in the last half of August are the ones that get you into the winter nest, but they aren't the ones that will survive to April. The ones that emerge in September, those are the ones that will have the longevity to get you to April, right? Everything's fluid, everything's in flux. That's basically how I look at it. But the bees in August, the way I look at it is generally those bees kind of they're kind of replaced through the winter with that little bit of brood rearing that goes on within that winter cluster. Those winter bees that start up, you know, around the December, January, February, March, just a little bit of brood rearing. Those bees that are developed and emerge, they're long-lived winter bees, and they get you well into spring. So the fluid nature of this wintering cluster, in my mind, is it starts in August, goes on into September, and then starts after Christmas, replaces all those August bees, and those September bees show their face in April, maintain themselves. You got those winter bees that drift that colony well into spring, and at that time they start developing their nest again. So many things going on. It's hard to actually grasp what's going on, and whether or not that's exactly what's going on, who really knows. That's just the way I understand it from all the observations I've been making over the years, and just, you know, specifically watching the brood rearing within the colonies, and then looking at a few pieces of study and just trying to connect dots, right? So that's the way I understand how these hives winter, and it's why I focus my management specifically on those certain conditions. And by doing that, I feel I'm able to bring my hives through winter consistently and successfully. Seems to be working, so I'll go with it. Walking out in the sunflower field, the combine is going in the distance over there. I'm about to take over. Let's look at some of these heads on these sunflower plants. I'm walking around the outside round. It's massive heads on the outside here. But as I go into where there's more plants, and we have them spaced out just perfectly, you notice the head's becoming much smaller. Because the outside round is, lacking that competition on one side. Inside here, every one of these plants are fighting to, use the resources that's available for them. So they grow taller, reaching for the sun, and they fight for the nutrients, and they develop according to exactly what's provided for them. I kind of take this philosophy, so we manage the population within the field to kind of find that magic balance, the magic balance of the nutrients we put down, that magic balance of, the space that they can most effectively grow, and utilize the most from it. So we'll put down the resources, we'll put down the plant population, which provides them with a certain amount of space, all those conditions, and then we'll get a nice uniform, even development right across the field to maximize our yield. And it's the same strategy, the same philosophy we use when when we're managing hives. A lot of beekeepers don't quite think along this term, but you have to. So you have your yards, your number of hives within your apiary, within your area, and you space them out according to the amount of resource that they have to be able to develop themselves, right? So you'll have that massive resource of nectar that you're focusing on, but throughout the entire year you have to focus on development. And those hives within that area can only develop to the amount of resource that's available to them to develop. So you have to make sure you don't overstock your apiary, because it puts a strain on resource, which then, if there's too much competition, you're going to end up with a small head, right? A small hive. So what you want to do is you want to space your hives out according to the amount of resource provided, to provide a more uniform, abundance across the apiary, which will yield into bigger and better hives like that, right? It's all about balance, finding that balance. Some areas can support more than others. Some areas can't support hardly anything. So in those certain places around the apiary that aren't as favorable in development, what you do is you move bees into the area for those times of abundance, but then you got to move them back out. You move them out into areas where maybe can support that number of bees to be able to, maintain that development. It's a development of that hive which sustains your operation. You can't just assume that you're going to be providing massive honey crops and assume that this area, wherever you are, is going to sustain a massive number of bees. You have to look at the resources available, and you have to be able to balance everything out. Because if you don't balance out the hives to the resources you have available, then Mother Nature is going to do that for you. And the way she does that is she just trims the crop, right? So then you're yielding a small little head like this instead of a nice productive head like that, right?